do this just this way. This is for you. We also have the best candidate for the Georgia Public Service Commission. I think you all know that the Public Service Commission regulates the power company and the gas company, among other things. And if you've been living here just a few years, you know the power company is just raising and raising and raising the rates. And now they say, because of AI, we have to do coal more, we have to do everything wrong, okay? I think we got some people that we can vote for, at least two candidates for the Public Service Commission all over the state who can help make things change. And here's our big chance. So if you will welcome today, Democratic candidate for the Public Service Commission, Peter Hubbard.
Hi, everyone. Good. This is working well. You can hear me, right? Okay, good. All right. Well, we have to speak with a loud voice sometimes to make folks hear what we need, what they need to hear. So I'm Peter Hubbard, and I'm delighted to be here with you all. And thank you for spending a Saturday morning. Hopefully, you're coming down from the sugar high of the Halloween treats yesterday. I have a little 4-year-old and a 9-year-old myself, and so we spent some time doing that. But what I'd like to do is just get right into it, tell you a little bit about this Public Service Commission race, why I'm in it, what the stakes are here, and then make sure that you all have a chance to ask questions and really grill me. I enjoy the Q&A part of a talk and hearing from you about what your concerns are. So. Again, Peter Hubbard, and I have been living in Atlanta for 10 years. I moved here because my wife works at the CDC, or did until recently. And she's also not getting a paycheck right now, which is also fun because she's one of these federal exempted workers. So she is employed, just not getting a job right now, getting a paycheck right now. So that's just another complication. It's tragic, honestly. I mean, not for us, but the fact that there are folks that are not even receiving food assistance right now, and that is deeply troubling. Getting a little bit off topic, but the Public Service Commission, so what it is and what it does. The PSC, it really should be called the Public Utilities Commission, and that would be more accurate as to what it does. It's a little bit by design, I think. The fact that we're having an election in an off year and the Public Service Commission is something that is just not well understood. Most people, even if you go to a No Kings rally, I would say 60% of the folks there don't know what the PSC is or does or how it impacts their lives. And by the way, there's an election in a few days. Public Service Commission, what it does is it was actually the entity that regulated the original monopoly in Georgia, which are the railroads, and it still oversees railroads. And that's a little known thing about the PSC is that it has the power to take away people's private property through eminent domain, and that happened in Hancock County in Sparta, Georgia. It's a location where there's a quarry, and then there's some families, about 15 families that have had land since the Civil War, in fact. And what the Public Service Commission did and is doing, it's still not done yet, and so it's one of the reasons why it's important to have someone on the PSC, two people, in fact, on the PSC who could do something about it, is they decided to expropriate that land, take that land, basically, and give it to the private quarry owners so that they could get their product out more efficiently. And they did not give fair market value to those landowners. So, I mean, that's just one thing that the Public Service Commission does that's not well known. But more importantly, I would say, even than that, is that the Public Service Commission regulates how much you pay on your power bill and then where that energy comes from, whether it's from coal and gas or from renewables like solar and the batteries that can help to soak up that extra solar and then distribute it on the grid when the sun isn't shining. They also regulate your gas bill, and then they regulate, if you have a landline, that telecommunication. Not cell phones, not internet, not water. There's a few things they don't do. Water's all done locally. And the reason, so the Public Service Commission, again, is incredibly important in the sense that it pays for what, it regulates what you pay on your power bill. And we've seen those power bills go up now 6 times in the last 2 years, from January 2023 to January 2025. 37% for the average Georgia Power Company customer, which is around $700 per year for the average family. I don't actually know about Cherokee County because there's such an archipelago of folks who pay either into Georgia Power Company or into electric membership corporations. What is it here in Cherokee County? Is there an EMC here? Sawney EMC? Cobb EMC, right, okay, that's right. And Cobb EMC is such a good example because EMCs are electric membership corporations, right, that the Public Service Commission doesn't directly oversee, but still has, the PSC has very much an impact on EMCs as well. Most notably with Plant Vogtle. That's the nuclear units where they built a 3rd and a 4th unit that came online in 2023 and 2024. That was 25% of the increase out of 37% of the 6, there was 2 of those 6 rate increases. And the reason why I mention that is because even the EMCs, although the contracts are staggered for different EMCs, you will see your bills go up even there because the EMCs and folks that pay to their municipal electric cities, there's about 91 folks that pay into their, the munis. Those bills are going to come due because the EMCs and the munis are half owners of Plant Vogtle, which is the most expensive power plant in the world. And again, the PSC doesn't directly oversee them, but the PSC, the EMCs, but you know, it's still very important to note that EMCs are membership owned, they're not for profit, and Cobb EMC is an excellent example because there are folks, you probably have neighbors who maybe on one side of the line, Georgia Power Company customers, and you've seen the most acute bill increases. Cobb EMC, in fact, has the lowest of the 41 EMCs around the state. And so there's a literal twofold difference between a Georgia Power Company customer and a Cobb EMC customer. The average bill is around $200. For Georgia Power, it's more like $100 at Cobb EMC. It's a pretty stark difference, and that's because the profit motive isn't there. The EMCs are really trying to do right by their customers, by the folks who actually own it. But that's not the case with Georgia Power Company. Going back to those 6 rate increases, 3 of them were simply so that Georgia Power Company could maintain its nearly 12% profitability. Its return on equity is what it's called. You know, what that results in is about, you know, last year, $2.5 billion is what Georgia Power Company harvested from us and sent to their shareholders at Southern Company. It's a really high metric, that 12%. And if we just adjusted it down to where every other electric utility in a competitive market environment were, around 9% or 9.5%, that alone would have freed up $700 million last year that could be put to lower folks' power bills. I just watched an interview by Tim Eccles. He's one of the commissioners that we're running against. And you know, he mentioned that there's no way that we can go in reverse and lower power bills. And right off the bat, that's one way that we can lower power bills is simply by adjusting that metric. They'd still be making plenty of money. I would argue that $1.8 billion is still plenty of money, but they just wouldn't make it hand over fist on our backs. And so that's one of the things that I truly want to work on immediately is trying to work with the remaining commissioners. We have the chance, by the way, to flip 2 seats on this Public Service Commission. Any registered voter in the state can vote for Peter Hubbard and Dr. Alicia Johnson. And that's part of the confusion is that we don't necessarily know, there's districts, right? And ostensibly I'm supposed to represent 3 of the 159 counties, but this is an at-large vote. And I'm looking at this as I represent the entire state, and that's the way it should be. So just bear in mind that anyone anywhere can vote for both of those seats. And then there's a 3rd seat that'll be up next year in November of 2026. In fact, I'll also be on the ballot again next year. I drew the short straw. There's normally a 6-year term. I'm running for a 1-year term, and that's because the way that we elect commissioners is by district. You have to live in a district to be a candidate, but then the whole state can vote on you. That was litigated. It was found to dilute black voters. That was upheld. It went all the way up, but appealed all the way up to the state Supreme Court. They overturned it, and then in the meantime, elections were canceled. So the gentleman that I'm running against, Fitz Johnson, he hasn't faced the electorate since he was appointed way back in 2020. He's on year 5, I think, of his being appointed by the governor. And then Tim Echols is on year 9 of a 6-year term. And I'm running for a 1-year term, and I have to start all over again next year. It's all because, thank you. It's all because of the delay in, well, they basically canceled elections while the way that the PSC is elected was being litigated. And here we are now 5 years later. The last election was November of 2020, and then there was a lawsuit filed before the next election, so they just canceled them until pending the outcome of that legislation. But I think they underestimated someone like me, because when you put barriers like that in front of someone like me, it makes me want to work that much harder. That's why I'm here. I think I've probably done maybe 80 different events now over the last 7 months. I made sure to go down to Albany and Columbus and Athens and places far afield, trying to tag team with my running mate, as I call her, Dr. Johnson, who's from Savannah and is trying to cover parts of the state down there as well. It's a big state. There's nearly 8 million voters. It's hard to talk to everyone, but you know, I'm here talking to you all because this is very important. So the PSC, again, they regulate what we pay on our power bills, and they also regulate where that energy comes from. Just to conclude, the 6 rate increases, I said 2 were for Vogtle, 3 were to maintain the profitability of the company, and then 1 was because in 2022, Russia attacked Ukraine, and the price of natural gas, or fossil gas as I call it, skyrocketed about 5-fold, and we're still paying that off. Frankly, we're putting more eggs into that basket right now with the data centers, with building more fossil combined cycle units. And so, and 100% of the fuel costs are passed through, by the way, to us. There's no skin in the game for Georgia Power, so they really have no incentive whatsoever to try and hedge or do anything other than use fossil gas for power generation. And we are building out quite a bit more right now. So those were the 6 rate increases that we just saw. Conveniently, they then locked those into place saying, hey, we have a rate freeze, and we're not going to touch them for the next 3 years. A couple of things that are wrong with that, though. One is that I'm old enough to remember just last year when Georgia Power, at the conclusion of the emergency power plan that they put forward, said that in the power plan that they were going to pass this year, that there would be a $2.89 decrease on the average power bill. That got swept under the rug, and there was no mention of that whatsoever. I also remember when they said when Plant Vogtle would come online that would lower our rates. That didn't happen either. There's a string of broken promises, and I've been down there at the commission for the last 6 years as a clean energy advocate, simply because this is important to me. I want to try and use the talent that I was given. I understand the energy sector. I've been doing a lot of modeling and analysis of the energy system we have, and I understand how we can transition to it. There's many things that you have to take into consideration: affordability, sustainability, and also reliability. And so what I did was I decided, my past career was working, sort of a 4-letter word, but as a consultant for Siemens Energy Business Advisory, doing that analysis, putting together long-term power plans for utilities around the country. And when I moved here 10 years ago, my wife and I looked at the way we're doing energy here in that long-term plan and thought, I think we can do better than that. And so I put together some comments in 2019, went down there, spoke my mind, and they said, thank you very much, and then they shuffled me along. And I came back again in 2022 and did even more. Went down there as an energy expert to provide expert witness testimony. It was important for me to make those comments and leave them in the official record so that I could look back and say, look, this is what we could have had we made the right decisions, and that was important to me and continues to be important to me. Then they had an emergency power plan in 2023 when they started to see all of the data centers coming here. And I gave comments then again, and I grew a little bit more pointed in my criticisms because they continued to ignore what we were saying. Folks who are clean energy advocates and folks who understand that embracing more solar energy, the God-given energy that comes directly from above to the power plant, that can help to lower power bills. And I also then in this last power plan this year used a little bit of that data center compute power and came up with an alternative integrated resource plan to actually demonstrate that we can lower folks' power bills, we can expand those who are coming to the state, people and businesses, even data centers. If you make them pay their fair share, they can actually lower the cost of everyone's bills because you have greater customers and you're using the energy grid that we already have more efficiently. That's the way that they can help to lower folks' power bills. There's a lot of fixed cost on the system, and when you have more customers coming in, paying their fair share, the overall cost, the average cost rather, goes down. But they're not paying their fair share so far as what I see. And we'll talk about that in a moment, especially when I open it up to Q&A. I'm sure you'll have questions. But I used a little bit of that data center compute power to come up with that power plan to demonstrate that we don't have to compromise on reliability, lower power bills, expanding our grid with renewables, and inviting new folks to the state, the economic development that can bring. And again, it fell on deaf ears, but I just keep going down there, and I don't know what it is, but I'm doing the brain damage, I think, so that you don't have to, thinking about this stuff. But I live, eat, and breathe energy. It's just fascinating to me, and I want to use that talent in a way that will leave the world a better place.
What is a data center?
Yeah, a data center is really nothing more than racks and racks of servers, computers, basically, that can be used for streaming, Netflix streaming. It could be used for, let's see, what else? Social media. It can be used for cryptocurrency. All of those things are sort of questionable, especially the cryptocurrency, but it can also be used in good ways as well. You can use them for discovering new medicines. You can use them for just making things a little bit more efficient. I used it to come up with that alternative integrated resource plan to analyze basically 4 different scenarios for the state of energy in Georgia, and that's one way that it can be used for. So they're used, basically anytime you send an email or something along those lines, there's a data center involved. And right now they're being used a lot for these large language models, ChatGPT, Anthropic, and some of those things, which I don't use all that often, but you can't do a Google search these days without seeing the data centers pop up and that sort of thing. And they use a good amount of energy. They use a lot of energy. So they can be good. They can have good uses. I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency. I just don't see the benefit of them. But data centers can be a force for good. Right now I see, though, that they're not really bringing the resources to the table that they should. And so we're building expensive fossil fuel power plants to help power them. We're making a pretty poor decision right now. So yeah, go ahead.
Who determines where the data centers can be built?
It is mostly, so it's really the PSC has oversight over just the energy side of it, but who determines it is there's 159 counties in this state, and what the data centers are looking for is cheap land. They already are getting a sales tax abatement. Since 2018, they have paid nothing in sales tax. So if it costs $500 million to build, nothing goes into the state coffers. The reason why they're coming to certain counties is because the land is cheaper. They tend to be to the south and west of Atlanta, where brown and black folk live, because the land is cheaper there. And it's the county commissioners and the regional economic development authorities that are chasing after the property tax revenues. Oftentimes, though, that they're only appraised at, say, 10 or 15 or 20% of what it costs to build them. And so they're chasing after a small amount of revenue, not realizing that it's also going to increase everyone's power bills as well and have impacts on the water that's being sucked out of aquifers and rivers. So it's really up to the local county commissioners and economic development authorities. Oftentimes there's real estate developers that will just option up land and then try and sell it off to a data center. They try and lay the groundwork and then sneak in a data center after that. Yeah, let's go right into questions because I want to, this is great.
From what I understand, Vogel had to be refurbished or whatever for billions and millions or whatever dollars. And the fact that if we start having all these wonderful data centers, there's not going to be enough electricity to power your house and my house, okay? So we're going to have to build more nuclear power plants, okay, for billions of dollars. And so, and we're not allowed to use any of the, natural resources or anything like that. We've got to go nuclear or coal or whatever to build more power plants to operate the data centers, which of course we all know are part of the thing is to download all our information, our medical information, the whole bit, so that they can consolidate it and use it. How do we pay for all these new things? We know the cost is going to come on me and you and everyone else in this room. So,
Unless we have two Democrats on the Public Service Commission. Well, let me answer that question real quickly. So what we did was at Plant Vogel, we authorized two new units, units 3 and 4. This was way back in like 2008, 2009 on the premise that load, which is energy demand, is going to go up at an angle like that. Instead, it has been flat over the last 15 years. So the very premise of why we needed that was unfounded. We spent 15 years of time and $37 billion of treasury. It is the most expensive power plant in the world right now. What is frightening to me about it, and by the way, we paid for 15 years of construction work in progress, so everybody who pays Georgia Power, that was $1,000, you paid before it even pushed an electron onto the grid. So if you died in year 14 or moved out of state, you're out of luck. The largest data center that I've seen, Project Sail in Noonan, Coweta County, I believe it is, it would take up about 2/3 of that time and treasure in one fell swoop. But it doesn't have to be that way. So what the data centers could do is bring their own resources to the table, and there's also something called curtailment-enabled headroom. It's a fancy way of saying that basically data centers, they say that they need 24/7, 365 power, but that's not actually how data centers are operated. They're usually around between 50 and 80% of the time they're pulling on the full amount. If we just require those data centers to have a tiny amount of flexibility, we're talking about 0.5 percentage point of the hours in a year. So a couple hundred hours when the peak demand is highest, then we don't have to build these expensive fossil fuel combined cycle power plants. You always overbuild your system, your electric grid by a bit, so that if there's a power plant that's down or you kind of plan for the very peak hour and then you overbuild, and it's called the reserve margin. Usually it's around 15% overbuild, and we're much higher than that. We're around 40% overbuild, and that's called gold plating, and it's because of the business model of Georgia Power. The more they build, the more they can collect that 12% return on equity. So that's why they choose the most expensive thing. But there are ways to where we can use the grid more efficiently and not build things and lower costs, and that's what we need to be doing. So, yeah, I saw your hand first, yeah.
Yeah. If you contrast what we as consumers pay on our power bills on a cost per therm basis, how does that compare to the data centers for what they're paying?
Great question. Okay, so if you're a large load customer, so 100 megawatts or larger, and some of these data centers are huge, when you run the numbers, when you actually calculate that, and I've done that, looked at the tariff, and it's a little complicated, but they pay 4.2 cents per kilowatt hour, And if you're a Georgia Power Company customer in the summertime, you pay 21 cents a kilowatt hour on the average tariff. That's a 5-fold difference. I'm not saying that they should pay exactly the same amount as us, because there's kind of 3 components to the grid: the generation, the transmission, and then the distribution. And we all pay the G&T side. That's the power plants and the high voltage lines that move it from the power plant to where it's consumed. Residential customers, we also pay for the distribution lines, the wires and poles in the neighborhoods. And that's a pretty good chunk of the overall cost. But it's not a 5-fold difference. They're getting a sweetheart deal. So in addition to the sales tax abatement, they're paying very little in power. And there's also no guarantee as well that if we're building all these power plants to help supply new data centers, that they're going to stick around. These power plants have to be paid off over decades. And data centers are very likely to go to some other state. They can pick up their toys and go somewhere else. In fact, you asked a question about what are data centers. They're racks of servers, and every few years they have to replace those because there's a newer model, there's a more efficient one. And we're in a sort of an AI race to the bottom is what I would call it. So, you know, they're getting a sweetheart deal on the power, on the sales tax abatement. That's why they're coming to the state. The legislature recognized that and tried to pump the brakes on that sales tax abatement last year, and the governor vetoed it. So that's why they're still coming here. But yes, it's a great question. So yes, you had a question.
Is Brian Kemp giving tax incentives to these data centers to come into Georgia?
Yes, by requiring them to pay nothing for sales and use tax. That's it. That's the incentive right there.
So Brady.
2 questions. One's really quick. How many people are on this board? What will 2 Democrats do? And also, I'm sort of adjacent to the data center universe. And I mean, like, the crypto plants chase the cheapest energy. They go, their profit margins are really slim. So it's, and what you said about it's a bunch of racks, it's a bunch of servers, when they have to replace those every couple of years, and it's going to be cheaper for them to build a new building somewhere else and just abandon all that than replace it. And also there's no jobs. Like,
Yeah, once they're built,
so
it's...
my question is, I mean, like, it's obviously not a good long-term deal. So why do politicians make it? Are they getting literally paid?
So just to start with, 5 members on the commission, and there will be 2 Democrats once we win on Tuesday. And we'll be sworn in January 1st. And we'll get to work doing what we can. We do have to work on getting that 3rd seat in November of 2026, and I will work even harder than I have now, because then Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, John Ossoff, myself, the PSC, all of that's on the line next year. And what I can do, even before we have the majority, is work. There are 2 Republicans on that commission that will still be there who have, I believe, good hearts, and I can work with them across the aisle. Their constituents are seeing high power bills too, and as I've mentioned before, I'm not just running against the Republicans that are there. I'm running with solutions that I'm bringing to the table, and I think that they will be receptive to that. There is one commissioner, Pridemore, who is probably get in trouble saying this, but Bribemore is what I call her, and I think it is because there's the local politicians who are chasing the scant property tax revenues. But also, Georgia Power Company is the economic engine of, I think, the Republican Party. They are giving a lot of money to that party, and so this is sort of the money machine. And I don't know that they're necessarily getting, they're sort of a workaround. It's not current officials of Georgia Power Company that donate to them. It's former officials, it's affiliates, it's others. But if you look at their disclosures, it's like Gas South, Atlanta Gas Light, former officials of Georgia Power. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from folks that, the 5 Republican commissioners that are there. So I think they're just trying to keep that money machine going. And Georgia Power Company makes a lot of money. Not only do they make money not only on these power plants that they're building, but also Southern Company is the parent company. They own the pipeline that transports the gas here. They own the marketing company that buys the gas and resells the gas and hedges and trades it. They're making money several different ways. And yeah, it's frustrating. It is frustrating to see. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question about what is the current direction that Georgia is moving into for providing power? Is it, obviously, it's probably not solar. And and you mentioned these new power plants that they're building. Are they coal, gas? Because, the Trump administration announced that they want to go more towards back to the coal and the oil and then, nuclear. So what's the current plan of Georgia?
There is, so the plan, that was the 2025 Integrated Resource Plan that was passed this year that I came up with an alternative of. The plan to supply all of these data centers is basically extend the life of the coal plants that we have now that should have been retired this year, and now we're extending their life to 2040. So all the coal ash piles around the state, we're just going to keep adding to them. Another reason why we need Democrats on the PSC is because the bill for all of that coal ash cleanup is already at $9 billion and counting, and it's still not clear who's going to pay for that. So we need to have someone who can advocate. Right. We're building. Normally, it's every year we might build a few hundred megawatts of new generation capacity on a system of 16,500 megawatts. In this power plan, this latest power plan, they're building over 10,000 megawatts of new generation. It's almost exclusively fossil gas-fired generation. There's a little bit of hydro, a little bit of uprating of nuclear, but it's almost exclusively new combined cycle fossil fuel power plants where the old coal plants are sitting. And they're doing that, again, because they can sell the gas on the pipeline, and it's very lucrative for them. But what really should be happening is it's almost exclusively being built for data centers. We need to put those costs, well, first of all, we don't even need to build those because there's other things I mentioned about how we can accommodate data centers without building new fossil fuel power plants. We need to put those costs in a bucket and make sure those costs are allocated to those who are causing them, the data centers. But there's a little bit, the one thing that I actually do like that they're doing is, solar is great, but you also have to, and the reason why it's so good is because once you build it, then the fuel cost is free. When you build a combined cycle gas-fired power plant, it's like a Netflix subscription. You have to keep buying it over and over and over again. We don't produce coal or gas here. We send $2 billion every year to Wyoming and Texas for that fuel. So we should be building much more solar done responsibly, not just in farmland and that sort of thing. But and then also the one thing that I do like that we're doing is, although I'm deeply suspicious about every single project being a company-owned proposal, is building battery energy storage systems. I know we have to be careful about that. Every once in a while they might catch fire. We have to be careful. But it avoids building new transmission lines. We can use the grid more efficiently. Batteries are like the Swiss Army knife of the grid. And it allows us to mop up that extra solar, which is cheap, and use it when we need it, which is in the evening time when the sun goes down and everyone's cooking dinner. So that's important.
I took a class on sustainable business in grad school, and we did a project with a farm somewhere central-ish that did the solar panels on the farmland. And it was held up to us students and in our research as being a really good thing, but you just mentioned that that's not necessarily what you're thinking. Can you talk about what you think are the pros and cons of doing solar on farmland?
Yeah, there is a way to do it right. It's called, oh, sure. The question was, she worked on a project in middle Georgia, southern Georgia, and it involved putting solar panels on farmland. And agriculture is the biggest business in this state. I would say that we should have the right to farm not just the land and the water, but also the sun, and so that's a form of solar, of farming rather. And I also know just from my work as bringing solar projects to market that it can be a great resource for a farmer in the sense that usually when you're growing row crops, you might get $400 or $500 an acre. Solar companies will pay $1,100, $1,200 an acre, and that's diversified revenue. Those power plants last 35 years. So, in some instances it can be okay. I definitely don't like mowing down trees to put up solar power plants. But if the land is already there, it could be used to farm the sun as well. Really what I'm talking about is if you've ever flown into Atlanta, you see all of those warehouse rooftops. And that can be an excellent place. The other reason why solar is so great is because like we build big power plants and then we have to plug them into the grid with large transmission lines. When you build the solar power plants right where it's being consumed in the cities on people's rooftops, then you don't have to have all of that extra infrastructure. And so that's what I mean is by using the little corners and nooks and crannies and rooftops for community solar. And you can lease that rooftop, you can deliver that energy to folks on the grid, and that's a responsible way to do it. And there's tons of great ideas like Minnesota and their community solar gardens. So, sorry, I'll go here next, yeah.
Easy question for you. There are 5 public service commissioners currently.
Yes.
They've been in office for years. They're all Republicans.
Yes.
Their job is to regulate the power company. Does the legislature get involved? Could the legislature pass a law that says, we're not building any more generation unless it's solar power with distributed across, put back to the grid?
And yes, they could. And I do intend to work with the legislature. There's even some Republicans, Beth Camp is one, or Chuck Hufstetler he represents Rome. He really tried to put a cap on these data centers and make them pay their fair share, and that was preempted by this rule that the PSC passed, saying, okay, from now on, data centers are going to pay their fair share, which sort of implies that they weren't paying their fair share before. A PSC rule can be changed in 30 days as well, unlike codifying it into law, where it's much harder to change. And then when you actually read the rule that they changed, it says that Georgia Power Company has the discretion to decide what is fair for those data centers to pay. So they're passing the buck. In theory, they should be regulating, but the PSC that we have is very reactive. It's Georgia Power that comes up with the long-term power plan. And of course they put their thumb on the scale. I think that's one of my secret weapons is back when I was a consultant, I ran that very model that Georgia Power Company uses. I know the tricks of the trade. I know how they can do things like give 0% capacity value to solar. And so the model selects for something else. I will be asking a lot of hard questions when I get on that commission of Georgia Power Company. Go ahead, sir.
The question is about solar power. The initial investment for homeowners is very high. And the other thing I heard about is the cost of the components are very, very inexpensive. The cost of labor is very high, especially for rooftop. But when it comes to putting it on the land, it's less expensive to do it too. And I think homeowners are not allowed to do that. There are some rules around it. But, so what is being done to bring down the cost of the installation, which is really, very expensive?
You're absolutely right. So the cost of the components, which we're manufacturing now in this state, in Dalton and Cartersville at the Q-Cells plant, it's the largest. In fact, when it was first built, it was the largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere, and then they expanded it twice. We're also building batteries here, SK Battery and EVs. We should be putting those resources to work and putting people to work building them. But it does cost more to put it on a rooftop. And part of that is the labor. To me, it's fine to pay a living wage, and I think we should be doing that. And so it is more costly, but there are still things that we can do there to put it on rooftops or just have it in your house and bring down costs. There's a wonderful concept called balcony solar, and Germany is embracing this. It's where you have 1 or 2 panels. It's never going to zero out your power bill, but you'd be surprised how much it can knock off your power bill over time, very passively. And part of it is we'll have to work on the building codes so that can be something that we can do without having a lot of fuss and having to get it approved. Part of it is just the hoops that you have to jump through to do rooftop solar, because we have to be safe and cautious about it. We don't want a downed power line, a lineman working on it and it being energized with backflow onto the grid. But a lot of it is just that the solar, there is a high upfront cost for it. It's not right for everyone. But what happens is when we actually give the correct value to solar, Right now, the only real benefit to putting solar on your rooftop is you're displacing that 21 cents per kilowatt hour that I was talking about. If you want to sell any extra onto the grid, you're only going to get about 30% of the value for it right now. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you can zero out part of your bill. And also just be careful. There are fly-by-night solar companies that'll say you won't have a power bill after that. The only way that's true is if you also put in batteries in your garage and you oversize your solar, but that's a costly way to do it. It's just better to depend on the grid and use a little bit of that solar to offset your bill. So that's it. Yes, go ahead.
You have
Next.
a deep background in physics and math and science.
Yes.
And obviously, from the answers, you're very qualified to do this job. And Dr. Johnson seems to be more motivated by healthcare and community service, and I'm wondering how the two of you will work together.
Well, my wife actually worked at the CDC, and so public health is incredibly important to me as well. I think that's part of the reason why we keep selecting fossil fuels, is because we're undercounting the true costs to the climate, to public health, and I think that needs to be incorporated into it. I know that Dr. Johnson, she'll listen to me when it comes to the technical side of things, and she'll do the right thing by listening to my arguments versus the others, and then I think voting in the right direction on these. So I have every faith that she'll be able to do the job. None of the 5 commissioners that we have right now have any energy background. We have here are the 5 that we have. I'm running against the real estate agent. She's running against, he's a teen coach. Teen coach, he founded something called Teen Pack. It's for conservatives. He has this weird thing where he's really into coaching teens, and then he also has this tour where he goes around and shows people where the human trafficking sites are around the state. It's weird. So real estate agent, teen coach, a party planner, that's Bribe Moore. She has her job because she helped put together the inaugural ball for Kemp. And then the 2 guys that I actually do think I can work with, the farmer and the undertaker, those are our 5 commissioners that we have.
So one was Bubby McDonald.
He's the undertaker, Bubba.
Oh, and then the farmer?
That's Jason Shaw.
Jason Shaw.
Right. Yes, we do need to. Do you finish your question? Yeah.
What mitigation are we using? I was under the impression that all the coal ash and the coal fire plants were replaced by gas.
No, we still have 2
So
coal
what
plants.
kind of mitigation do we have for coal ash? Because that stuff is heavy metals and it stays around for
And
generations.
it's lying in unlined pits, and so every time it rains, it's like steeping your tea bag, and it just flows into the aquifer. And that's why Georgia Power bought up all the land around Plant Shear, so that you can't test the water. Plant Shear is in Juliet. It's right in I think it's just north of Macon. It's right in the center of the state. Yes, go ahead, sir. I'll get you next. Go ahead. You go ahead, sir.
When speaking with skeptics who claim that solar plus battery can't scale to the level of a state, do you know of any other states that serve as examples that got it right?
Texas, of all places, Texas. Texas is going gangbusters with solar right now. Why? Because it's dirt cheap, and it's a very sunny state in Texas as well. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. What I like about the energy sector is when people, this dumb thing about DEI not being great, I can literally quantify the diversity and its value for the energy grid when you have a diversity of resources. Obviously, the sun doesn't shine all the time. We only have 7% solar right now in this state, and this is a very sunny state. We could get to 40, 50%, maybe even 60% before we really want to start thinking about other options. When you start pairing the solar, and that's just solar alone, when you start pairing the batteries with the solar, then you can mop up all that extra sunshine. You're making hay while the sun is shining, and then using those batteries when peak demand is there.
What percentage solar and battery is Texas?
It is a peak. Right now, their grid is around 86,000 megawatts, and this is my day job. I build solar in places like Texas. They have just surpassed 30,000 megawatts of solar, and they also have even more than that in wind. And so those 2 resources are amazingly complementary.
Yeah.
when the sun stops shining, the wind picks up, and when the wind stops blowing, then it's daytime again. And so you need a little bit of batteries to bridge the gap as well, but Texas, of all places, is showing it can be done. The whole middle swath of the country, there's a couple of wholesale power markets there, Southwestern Power Pool, SPP, heavily dependent on wind, but they are showing that we can have a renewable grid, or a grid that is that has a lot of renewables on it, and it could be just as reliable. 50%? I've seen it be, well, so energy is electricity. The physics of it are such that you have to consume it immediately when it's generated. When you flip on a light somewhere, a power plant spins a little bit faster. Right. I've seen Texas and SPP, that market, be 100% for an hour. I would say right now it's probably only around like 60%, but it's still heavily dependent on renewables and doing it. So you had a question.
Go ahead. Yeah. You were talking about rooftops. These data centers are huge, and they have huge rooftops. Why is it that we aren't requiring them to be fully solared on their roof, not taking any farmland, not taking anything, use the power right where it is, put some battery systems in instead of the diesel generators that are running on their down and blip moments and such. And now that we're going into these salt batteries instead of lithium batteries, then the fire issues aren't there. So why is it that we can't just legislate that if this is your target number, you're going to need X, things. We say 50%. You must take care of 50% of your own.
That's right. We can. There's no reason why we can't do that.
Does that start at the legislature, or is that part of the PSC?
The PSC. No, it's really the Public Service Commission. We can make that happen. Now they use so much power that they don't have enough roof space. They can't generate everything they need. But our grid is, the grid is all of Georgia and then all of Alabama and parts of Mississippi, anywhere. I'd much rather us build things in Georgia and put Georgians to work, but anywhere in those 3 states, the power is all being shared. It's all a tight electric power pool, and so those resources could go anywhere in that footprint and serve a data center. So it could work that way. Yeah, go for it.
So my question is related. As we have corporations and data centers coming in, are we able to require them, in addition to the solar, but require them to contribute to plans to clean up or invest in universities for research and job development to support cleaner energy?
Yeah, there's something called a community benefits agreement, and it's not one single template for it. It really, what you should do, I was a Peace Corps volunteer way back in the day in Morocco, and I learned the lesson that you have to go to the community, listen to what they need, and then respond accordingly. And that's what a community benefits agreement can do, is if there's a need to, like a STEAM academy or something to help out, whatever it may be, yeah, you can put that condition on it. That's more the role not of the PSC, but of those county commissioners that are inviting those data centers to that location. There's no reason why I can't use the bully pulpit of the PSC to talk about something like that, to talk about public health, talk about things that are important to the overall picture of these data centers coming here. So yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and we just have to ask, basically demand that of these customers. So it's a really good question. Yes, ma'am.
So a counterpoint that has been made to me, and I'm a huge supporter of alternative energy, but a person who is not a fan of it pointed out to me the longevity of the equipment. So the panels themselves, the blades of the turbines, all these things, that those are not particularly ecologically sensitive things, and that they've got a fairly short lifespan, is what he told me. So that's the question.
Solar panels will last 35 years. The warranty on them, the ones being built at Q-Cells, are 30 years. They can go longer than that. They can go 40 years. And they do degrade a little bit, about 0.5 percentage point over time, but even at the end of their life, it's around 80%, and they're still generating plenty of electricity. I have heard we're not going to do any wind here in this state. It's really doesn't make sense. We don't have strong enough resources, and it's more costly. They do make the wind turbines out of fiberglass, and I don't think it's easy to recycle them, although there are companies working on it. As far as toxicity, though, no. Solar panels, the only real danger is being electrocuted from them if they're not done correctly. That's all. But otherwise, they're far less toxic than the coal and the gas that we're digging up and the resources that are going into those. They could be recycled, and in fact, I think we have some solar panel recycling facilities here in this state, so that it can be more of a circular economy.
That's what I need. I need to be able to have those points to take back.
Yep. Anybody else? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
One more.
Okay.
This is kind of a swamp. Does the Public Service Commission have any control or say over the reliability of your electricity? The reason I ask this is I have lived in this county for years and years, and I spent over 20 years, I was on Sawney. And over that time, maybe I had 20 hours of power outage. Since I have moved less than 2 years ago, and I'm now on Georgia Power, I'm pushing 40 hours of not having power.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are unexplained. Some of them were storm and, trees fell, but a great many of them, I have no idea why.
It is why I'm so frustrated when I hear commercials touting the reliability of the Georgia Power grid. And that, again, they're collecting that 12% return on equity on the commercials telling me that their grid's reliable, and it's not. You can look at the metrics, and we're in the bottom quartile of electric utilities. And so it's frustrating, but directly that's something that we have control over. Despite that 40% reserve margin I told you about, we still have a lot of unreliability. In fairness, about 95% of all of the outages are at the local level, the distribution level. It's usually a tree or something that falls on a line, or a squirrel that shorts out a circuit, unfortunately for that squirrel. But we don't have a terribly reliable grid, and if anyone has a power wall or a battery in there, some sort of smart thing like that, or a generator, you'll see how, then you probably know. You do know, because you just said 40 hours. You look at that and you see all the outages and you realize, good Lord. Or even the quality of it, the flickering of the lights. You can fry your electronics if the power quality isn't there. So yes, that's exactly what the PSC does, is regulate that. I think that was it for questions, but thank you all. Last question. Pam.
Really fast. I'm concerned that after we vote you and Dr. Johnson in, we all go home and forget about the PSC and you guys fighting for us. What can we do as citizens to help you and to support you and to advocate for clean energy?
Yeah, really great question. I will be on the ballot again next year, and so I have to keep going out and doing all of this, but I enjoy this. I'm going to be knocking doors after this. I like talking to folks and just keep getting the word out. I think that's probably the best thing, is to just continue to talk to your neighbors about this and let them know. You can always post on social media as well, and that's a good way that a lot of folks connect, like Facebook, and that's using some of those data centers to spread the word a little bit. But I think that's a good way to do it.
A lot of us are hesitant to canvass just because it seems like,
Especially in Cherokee County.
we're bothering people. But I did it, and it wasn't really that bad. So if canvassing is the way for us to increase these votes, it's not that bad. It's not scary.
No nightmare stories at all?
Say it again?
No nightmare stories at all?
No, because you're just hitting Democratic voters.
I had one new father who cussed me out because I rang the doorbell and I didn't realize the baby was sleeping. And as I have a 4-year-old, so very sorry, sir. That was the worst that I've ever had. I'll just leave you with this, though, that I don't have the numbers from yesterday, but early voting through Thursday, we have a 100,000 vote lead out of it. There's a column, there's a category of they haven't voted before and we don't quite know which way they're going to go. But if if the number guys are correct, it's looking like 60-40 right now, which is pretty awesome.
Peter Hubbard, you have a question?
Just a comment. I'm Julie, and I'm the head of the Get Out the Vote team for Cherokee County Democrats. So we've been stumping for you, and Alicia, are the numbers the same for her as well?
I think it's hard to know. We won't know until November,
Yeah.
November 4th. There was at least one poll I know of where I was about 3 points ahead of her because I'm the energy expert running against a realtor. Right. Tim Eccles, who she's running against, styles himself as an energy expert. And she doesn't have that background, so I think she's got a little bit of a deficit compared to me, but it was like a 3-point difference.
Not much. Okay. So, okay, I'm sorry.
And I would just say, like, everything that we've been sending out has both our smiling faces on it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
shouldn't just pick both.
So, on the canvassing thing, I've heard over and over again, people will jump in and do it, and it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, you know? So please don't let that make you scared. We typically, and especially this time around, these are all Democrats, okay? We're trying to get the Democrats out to vote. So we're not sending you to, you know, unpleasant people. So, so we encourage it. Well, that's a lot of times we're just dropping the literature. We are having a canvas launch right after this, and I've got tons of packets to send out. It's a beautiful day. We're going to be canvassing for the 2 PSC candidates as well as our local Woodstock candidates. So it's all a big, huge box with a bunch of stuff to pass out. So, and we'll pair you up if you've never done it. So please consider joining us immediately after this meeting.
I would join you, except I committed to go to Lawrenceville to canvas over there. So otherwise, I would be right here with you. So I enjoyed it.
If you learned something today about Georgia Power, raise your hand. Peter Hubbard, we need to elect him. Thank you very much. That's good. That was a statewide office, so everybody in the entire state is going to vote. But we've got other candidates in the room. We have nonpartisan elections for mayor, city council here in Woodstock, and they're standing right there in the back. So